sliding clutch aiming at main shaft key groove, install it downward. Choose suitable adjusting gasket so as to gain the correct clearance data. Use the thickness gauge to measure the clearance between two gears interfaces. The clearance should be between 0.13 mm and 0.30 mm. Pull the adjusting gasket through main shaft to the third wide groove. With its convex side downward, rotate the gasket, move the hex key upward. Install second speed gear and spline gasket with the contact teeth downward, facing sliding clutch. Embrace the spline gasket so as to prevent it from dropping out. Install the third speed gear and spline gasket onto main shaft with the contact teeth upward. Mount adjusting gasket onto main shaft with the convex side upward. Embrace the adjusting gasket with the point of two ball head driver so as to rotate it. If it doesn't fit, find a suitable adjusting gasket instead and move the hex upward. Clip the 3x10 hollow spring pin, knock it into the hole of main shaft. Mount the third sliding clutch onto main shaft. Take the main shaft assembly from the caliper, lay it flat on desk. Mount reverse gear onto main shaft. There are two wide grooves at the back of reverse gear. Mount spline gasket. Mount stop ring onto main shaft. Mount stop ring into the second narrow groove at the rear part of main shaft. Hatch of the stop ring must avert hex key. Finish all procedures of the main shaft sub-assembly. Clearance between 3-speed and 2-speed gears interfaces should be within 0.13 mm to 0.3 mm. Clearance between 1-speed and crawl gears interfaces should be within 0.13 mm to 0.3 mm. Clearance between reverse gear and driving gears interfaces should be within 0.30 mm to 0.90 mm. Mount driving gear assembly at the rear part of main shaft assembly. Prise the driving gear with two screwdrivers. Measure the clearance, which should be within 0.30 to 0.90 mm. Take out stop ring in driving gear. Dismantle driving gear. Mount reverse yoke, spring, cylinder plug, and lock cylinder plug to avoid dropping. Mount reverse yoke and reverse yoke shaft. Mount 3 and 4 inch steel ball and 1 and 2, 5 and 6 guide block, 1 and 2. Five and 6 yoke, 1 and 2, 5 and 6 yoke shaft and interlocking pin. Mount 3 and 4 inch steel ball and 3 and 4, 7 and 8 yoke shaft, 3 and 4, 7 and 8 guide block, 3 and 4, 7 and 8 yoke, Then put the hole into the cover housing. Screw it tight with 5 bolts. Fix it with steel wire. After that, check up the interlocking status. Respectively, put 3 1 and 2-inch interlocking steel bolts in the top cover housing. Then mount another 3 interlocking spring. 3 and 4 spring are marked with yellow paint and harder. The other 2 spring are marked with green paint and relatively softer. There are over 40 kinds of components. Double H housing, bush, reverse switch, neutral switch, cylinder pin, locating cylinder plug spring, red installed inside of the housing, spring pressing slate, windpipe, double H valve, triangle junction box 45-degree plug, horizontal shifting lever, low locating ring, shifting plug, shifting rocker, and so on. Install the bush onto the double H control housing with tools. Can resort to other means. Rotate the double H control housing. Install a bush from another end. Lubricating oil should be exerted when mounts the bush. Put the spring marked with red paint and spring seat into the housing. Spring seat upward. Post the pin of spring distance sleeve against the screw hole on the housing. After putting distance sleeve into the housing, tighten the locating screw. Slightly knock the oil sealing into the housing. Install locating ring onto horizontal shifting lever and put spring placket pin into the hole of the locating spring. Slightly knock it flat. Pull the horizontal shifting lever into double H housing. Attach plug onto the horizontal lever and install reversing control piece onto horizontal shifting lever. Make sure the pinhole on the controlling piece should be against the hole of the lever. Move the horizontal shifting lever inward. Make sure the pin on the shifting plug is against the hole on the shift. Put the spring snap pin into the hole. Knock it flat. Be careful about direction of plug. Put into steel wire and tie it up. Use the lubricating oil when mount the cylinder plug. Put it into the housing and mount spring into the hole of cylinder plug. Put on a gasket. Fix spring pressing slate onto the housing with bolts. Mount the opposite cylinder plug with the same approach. Rotate the housing, harness the spring with the spring seat, and put the hole into double H housing. The seat face inward. Press spring with the cover and fix them onto one side of the housing with 4 bolts. Make the double H housing stand straight. Install the dustproof. Install the shifting rocker onto the horizontal shifting lever. The head of shifting rocker should be in a straight line with the plug. Insert the locking bolt into the shifting rocker screw hole. Screw it down. Install the vent plug onto the double H controlling assembly. Tighten